Picture this. You step into a dimly lit Egyptian crypt, your light cutting through 2,000 years of darkness. Suddenly, you spot something astonishing.
Hidden beneath one of Egypt's oldest temples lies a carving known as the Dendera Light, a mystery that has puzzled experts for generations. Most called it simple mythology, nothing more than an old story of creation. Then Grok AI reanalyzed the ancient shapes, stripped completely of religious labels, studying only lines, curves, and structure. What it found was not myth, and not proof either, but something strange enough to unsettle researchers who expected the debate to stay closed forever. The results shocked even skeptics watching closely. So what if this carving is holding a secret no one has been brave enough to ask about yet? The hidden chamber beneath Dendera. Deep in southern Egypt, along the banks of the Nile, stands a temple that has watched over the land for more than 2,000 years. It is called the Temple of Hathor, and it sits inside the ancient city of Dendera. Priests once walked its halls every single day, carrying offerings and singing songs to their goddess. Visitors from every corner of Egypt came here to pray, to heal, and to feel close to the divine. But this temple hides a secret that most visitors never see. Below the grand halls, hidden beneath the floor, there are narrow crypts. These are not open to tourists, and reportedly, they were never open to ordinary priests either. Only a small group of trusted keepers were allowed to enter. Sources describe these chambers as sacred spaces, built for rituals so secret that even their meaning has been mostly lost to time. It is inside one of these hidden crypts that the world's strangest carving waits in the dark. Most people call it the Dendera Light. On the wall, carved with careful hands, sits an image that many say looks nothing like the religious art found anywhere else in Egypt. It shows long, tube-like shapes, with strange coiled lines curling inside them. Some historians say it is only a symbol, a picture from an old creation myth. Allegedly, it shows a lotus flower giving birth to a serpent, a story that appears in old Egyptian texts. Others are not so sure. To them, the shapes look less like flowers and more like machines. The tubes seem to hold something inside, almost like glass holding a wire. It is a comparison that feels impossible, and yet, once you see it, it is hard to unsee. For many years, this argument never moved forward. Historians studied the carving as mythology, while a small number of curious minds studied it as engineering. Neither side had the tools to truly test the other. The debate simply repeated itself, year after year, decade after decade, with no new answers ever appearing. What makes this even stranger is the location itself. Reportedly, this temple dates back only to the time when Greek kings ruled Egypt, a period known as the Ptolemaic era. Yet the temple's own inscriptions claim it was built by copying plans that were far, far older, texts said to come from a time before written history even began. So the question grows heavier, the longer you sit with it. Why would priests hide something so strange, so deep underground, in a chamber built for only a chosen few? And why, out of every wall in this ancient temple, did they choose this exact carving to keep sealed in darkness? What one engineer noticed inside these very chambers would soon turn a quiet myth into a global mystery, one that even artificial intelligence could not fully explain. The engineer who saw a machine instead of a myth. Many years ago, long before anyone had heard of artificial intelligence, a man named Walter Garn stood inside that same dark crypt. He was not a historian. He was not a priest. He was an electrical engineer from Austria, trained to look at wires, tubes, and machines every single day of his working life. When Garn looked at the carving on the wall, he did not see a flower or a myth. He saw something that reminded him of his own job. The shape reportedly looked like a tube, long and rounded, just like the glass tubes used in old electrical devices. Inside that tube, a curling line stretched from one end to the other, almost like a wire glowing inside glass. At the base of the shape sat a strange box-like object, which some viewers compared to a small machine or a container of power. Garn broke the image down piece by piece, the way an engineer studies a blueprint before building anything new. He noticed how each part connected to the next in a way that felt oddly logical, oddly technical, rather than purely artistic. To Garn, this was strangely similar to something called a Crookes tube, an early scientific device used to study electricity long before light bulbs were invented. A Crookes tube also uses a glass tube, with a wire or beam running through it, connected to a power source at one end. Garn never claimed that ancient Egyptians had electricity. He was careful with his words, saying only that the similarities were worth studying, not worth believing blindly. He argued that dismissing the carving without real investigation was not truly scientific either. Of course, many historians disagreed completely. They pointed to old Egyptian texts, which describe a lotus flower and a serpent, tied to stories of creation and rebirth. To them, the tube was simply a flower, and the wire was simply a snake, nothing more than ancient symbolism painted in stone. For decades, this disagreement never fully settled. Engineers saw machines. Historians saw mythology. Neither side had a way to test the shapes without bringing their own beliefs into the study. Garn passed away without ever seeing his theory proven or disproven. His observation remained frozen in time, a small crack in an old debate that refused to close. But ideas, once planted, do not always disappear. Decades later, a new kind of mind would return to this very same carving, one that had never heard of Egypt, never studied mythology, and never carried any belief about ancient gods at all. That mind was not human. It was Grok, an artificial intelligence system, and it was about to study the Dendera Light, using a method no human researcher could ever fully copy. Recreating the relief inside a computer. Before Grok could study anything at all, researchers first needed something no historian had ever possessed before, a perfect copy of the carving, far more accurate than any drawing, sketch, or photograph could ever capture. Using laser scanners, the team measured every single curve, groove, and edge cut into the ancient wall. Each scan captured tiny details invisible to the human eye: the depth of a line, the angle of a corner, the slight wear left behind by thousands of years underground. Photogrammetry added another layer of precision. This technique stitches together thousands of individual photographs, slowly rebuilding the carving as a full three-dimensional model inside a computer. Archaeological measurements, taken carefully by hand, and high-resolution images from every possible angle completed the picture. Piece by piece, the digital copy grew until it matched the real stone almost perfectly. Accurate enough that researchers could study it endlessly without ever touching the fragile ancient wall itself. Then came the most important decision of the entire investigation, a decision that would shape everything that followed. Grok was never told this object came from Egypt. Every religious label was quietly removed before the analysis began. No mention of Hathor, no mention of lotus flowers, no mention of serpents, gods, or sacred creation stories. The system received only raw geometry, shapes without names, and lines without meaning. Alongside this unlabeled carving, researchers uploaded thousands of engineering blueprints from completely different sources. These included vacuum tubes, Crookes tubes, pressure vessels, discharge lamps, and many other unrelated mechanical designs. None of these images carried labels either. Grok had no way of knowing which drawings were ancient and which were built only decades ago. Instead of asking a simple, almost childish question, "Does this look like a light bulb?" researchers gave Grok something far harder to solve. They asked it to search for engineering systems that shared the exact same structural relationships as the carving, the same proportions, the same internal spacing, and the same connection geometry between each part. This approach removed human bias almost entirely from the process. Grok could not be influenced by ancient mythology because it did not know mythology existed anywhere in the data. It could not be secretly hoping to prove ancient technology either, because it held no beliefs, no excitement, and no hidden agenda at all. It simply compared shapes to shapes, patterns to patterns, structure to structure. Only after this entire process was complete did researchers finally reveal where the carving truly came from and what it was originally believed to represent. Grok's conclusion, when it finally arrived, was careful and measured, not wild or dramatic. It did not declare the carving proof of an ancient electrical device. Instead, it classified the object as showing an unusually high degree of engineering consistency, a pattern strong enough to justify further scientific study rather than quiet dismissal. This was not a bold discovery. It was something quieter, and in many ways, far more interesting. A machine noticing a pattern that generations of human experts had only ever argued about. But the investigation was not finished yet. As researchers explored deeper into the temple's other hidden walls, they discovered something unexpected. The famous carving was never alone in the darkness. The other Dendera reliefs. Most people who hear about the Dendera Light only picture one single carving, but hidden through the same crypts, several more reliefs sit quietly on nearby walls, each one showing a very similar object. At first glance, these carvings look almost identical to the famous one. There is still a long tube-like shape. There is still a curling line inside it. There is still a base structure connecting everything together. Look closer, and small differences begin to appear. In some reliefs, the curling line sits near the top of the tube. In others, it curls closer to the middle or stretches almost to the very end. The overall shape of the object remains the same, but the position of this inner line seems to shift from carving to carving. Historians studying only mythology often looked at these reliefs one at a time, treating each one as a separate scene from an old religious story. But Grok was not limited in this way. It compared every relief together at once, searching for shared structure across all of them, rather than judging each carving on its own. This wider comparison revealed something important. While the internal line moved from carving to carving, the outer framework almost never changed. The tube stayed the same size. The base stayed in the same position. The connecting points between each part remained consistent, carving after carving, wall after wall. This kind of consistency raised an interesting possibility. Perhaps these carvings were never meant to be separate, unrelated images. Perhaps they showed the same object in different states, almost like frames from a single sequence, each one capturing a different moment or a different stage. Of course, there is another explanation, one many historians still support. Ancient Egyptian art often repeated religious scenes with small variations to represent different stages of a myth, different chapters of a sacred story. The shifting line inside the tube could simply represent a serpent moving through a symbolic tale of creation rather than any kind of machine-changing states. Grok did not choose one explanation over the other. It simply reported what the geometry showed, a consistent structure repeated with small internal changes, a pattern that could support either mythology or engineering, depending on how it is finally understood. Whatever the true answer may be, this discovery made the mystery even more complicated. This was never just one strange carving hidden in a quiet corner of Egypt. It was a series of related images, deliberately placed together, deliberately repeated with care. But the puzzle did not end on the walls. Above these very same crypts, another mystery had been waiting in the dark for centuries, one that had nothing to do with tubes or serpents at all, and everything to do with paint, soot, and the strange absence of both. The mystery of the dark ceilings. Deep inside many ancient Egyptian tombs and temples, painted ceilings stretch across the stone, showing stars, gods, and colorful scenes from old religious stories. These paintings sit far underground, in rooms with no windows and no natural sunlight at all. This raises a simple but puzzling question. How did ancient painters see well enough to create such detailed art in rooms that were pitch black the moment the sun went down? The most common answer is simple: oil lamps. Reportedly, ancient workers carried small lamps filled with oil, using a simple wick to create a steady flame. This explanation makes sense on the surface, and most historians accept it without much argument. But a strange problem appears when researchers look closely at the ceilings themselves. Oil lamps, especially simple ones, produce smoke. Over hours and hours of continuous use, that smoke should have coated the ceiling in a dark layer of soot, especially in rooms with poor airflow, sealed away underground for years during construction. Yet in many of these painted chambers, that soot is almost completely missing. The colors remain bright, and the stone above them stays surprisingly clean, in places where centuries of lamp smoke should have left dark, heavy stains. This absence has puzzled researchers for decades. Some argue that ancient workers used special wicks or added natural salts to their oil, allowing the flame to burn much cleaner than researchers originally expected. Experiments recreating these old lamp recipes have shown promising results, reportedly reducing smoke significantly compared to simple candles. Others suggest a completely different method: mirrors. Bright, polished metal mirrors held outside the chamber entrance could reflect sunlight deep into the tomb, bouncing it from mirror to mirror until it reached even the darkest corners. This method would explain clean ceilings perfectly, since no flame would be needed at all. Both theories have strengths and both have weaknesses. Special oil wicks reduce soot, but may not eliminate it completely across many hours of painting. Mirrors provide clean light, but require careful positioning and may not reach the deepest, most twisted chambers hidden far underground. It is important to understand something here. This mystery exists completely on its own, separate from any question about Dendera's engineering-like carvings. Dark ceilings appear across many Egyptian sites, in tombs that have nothing to do with tube-shaped reliefs or curling serpents. Still, this unanswered puzzle adds another quiet layer of mystery to ancient Egypt as a whole. It shows that even in spaces without any strange machine-like carvings, ancient builders solved problems in ways that modern researchers still struggle to fully explain. If ancient Egyptians could master lighting techniques clever enough to confuse scientists thousands of years later, it raises a bigger and much more exciting question. Could other lost inventions from this same civilization still be waiting, hidden, misunderstood, for the right discovery to finally bring them back into the light? The Baghdad battery and ancient electricity. Far from Egypt, in a museum in Iraq, sits a small clay jar that has caused just as much debate as the Dendera Light. Historians reportedly call it the Baghdad battery, and it may be one of the strangest objects ever pulled from ancient soil. The jar is simple enough. Inside it sits a copper cylinder, and inside that cylinder rests an iron rod held carefully in place without the two metals ever touching directly. Researchers believe the jar was once filled with a mild acidic liquid, perhaps vinegar or juice from grapes. When modern scientists built exact replicas of this jar using the same materials and the same simple design, something surprising happened. The replicas produced a small electrical current, weak but very real, measurable with modern equipment. This discovery has fueled decades of speculation. Some believers argue this proves ancient civilizations understood electricity long before modern history books admit. Others take a far more careful approach, and their caution is important to understand clearly. A small electrical current does not automatically mean ancient people used electricity for lighting, tools, or machines. Many researchers believe the jar functioned as a simple galvanic cell, similar in basic principle to a modern battery, but there is no solid evidence explaining what, if anything, ancient users actually connected to it. Some historians suggest a much simpler purpose entirely: electroplating. A weak current like this could help apply thin layers of metal, perhaps gold or silver, onto jewelry or small decorative objects, creating a subtle shine without needing any advanced tools. Other researchers remain skeptical of even this idea, arguing that no wires, no plating tools, and no matching decorated objects have ever been found alongside these jars. Without that supporting evidence, everything remains careful speculation rather than proven fact. What makes this discovery so important is not proof of ancient light bulbs or hidden power plants. It is proof that ancient civilizations sometimes stumbled onto real scientific principles, centuries before modern science fully explained why those principles worked. This raises an important and honest possibility. Perhaps other similar experiments existed once, small, simple devices built through trial and error, only to be lost completely to time, destroyed by wars, floods, or simply forgotten as knowledge passed between generations. The Baghdad battery does not prove the Dendera Light was a real lamp. It proves something quieter, but almost as fascinating: that electricity itself may not have been entirely unknown to the ancient world. If a simple clay jar could accidentally create a genuine electrical current, then perhaps the carvings back in Dendera deserve a second look too, especially the words carved directly beside them, waiting patiently to be read with fresh eyes. The hieroglyphs beside the mystery. Every carving inside an Egyptian temple usually sits beside hieroglyphs, ancient symbols used to explain, honor, or describe the images nearby. The Dendera Light is no exception, and the words beside it have been studied and translated many times. Traditional translations describe imagery connected to creation and divine illumination. The lotus flower, a powerful symbol of rebirth, opens to reveal a serpent, representing new life emerging from sacred waters. Light, in this context, refers to divine energy, spiritual illumination, not physical electric light. For most historians, this settles the debate completely. The words match the mythology matches the artwork, and the entire scene fits neatly into Egypt's well-documented religious traditions. However, some researchers raise an interesting linguistic point, one worth exploring carefully rather than dismissing outright. Ancient Egyptian religious language often described real objects using deeply symbolic terms, blending the physical and spiritual together in ways modern readers do not naturally expect. For example, powerful pharaohs were often described using divine, godlike language, even though everyone understood they were still human rulers. Similarly, some researchers suggest that inscriptions describing light and energy could theoretically describe a real device if that device was understood or explained through sacred religious symbolism rather than modern technical language. This does not mean the traditional translation is wrong. Reportedly, most language experts strongly support the mythological reading, and there is no direct hieroglyphic evidence describing wires, tubes, or machines in any technical sense whatsoever. Still, the possibility remains linguistically interesting, rather than dismissed completely. Ancient language rarely separated the physical world from the spiritual world the way modern science does today. A single word or phrase could easily carry both meanings at once, depending on who was reading it and why. This creates an honest, balanced conclusion. Both interpretations remain fully possible, side by side. The hieroglyphs almost certainly describe mythology first, following Egypt's rich religious traditions. But the deeper structure of the language leaves a small, careful opening for symbolic descriptions of something else entirely. Something ancient priests may have understood in ways modern readers have not yet fully translated. Neither interpretation cancels the other completely. Mythology and hidden meaning have coexisted in ancient texts before, layered carefully, deliberately, waiting for readers with the right knowledge to notice both meanings at once. With the engineers' early observations, the precise digital measurements, the repeated reliefs, the mystery of the ceilings, the Baghdad battery, and now these carefully balanced hieroglyphs, every piece of this ancient puzzle finally sits on the table together. When researchers stepped back and studied everything at once, rather than one piece at a time, a much bigger, much harder to ignore pattern began quietly forming across the entire investigation. The pattern no one had studied before. For centuries, every piece of this mystery sat scattered in different rooms, studied by different experts who rarely spoke to each other. Engineers looked at machines, historians looked at mythology, chemists looked at batteries, linguists looked at words carved in stone. No one had ever gathered every piece together, in one place, at one time. Until now. Start with the engineer. Walter Garn looked at the Dendera carving decades ago and noticed something that felt strangely technical. A tube, a wire, a base, arranged in a way that reminded him of devices he built with his own hands. He never claimed proof. He only asked for study. Add the digital measurements. Modern researchers scanned every curve of the carving with lasers and cameras, creating a perfect copy accurate enough for a machine to study without any human bias at all. This alone was something no historian 100 years ago could ever have done. Add Grok itself, an artificial mind, given only shapes, with no knowledge of Egypt, no knowledge of gods, and no belief system of its own. It compared the carving to thousands of unlabeled engineering blueprints and found a level of structural consistency strong enough to describe as unusual, worth further study, rather than random chance. Add the repeated reliefs. This was never just one carving hidden in one dark room. Several nearby walls showed the same object again and again, with only the inner line shifting position each time. The outer framework stayed remarkably consistent, carving after carving, suggesting careful, deliberate design rather than random artistic repetition. Add the proportional consistency. Across every version of this carving, the size, spacing, and connection points between each part remained steady. This kind of precision is rare in purely symbolic art, where artists often adjust details freely from scene to scene without any strict rule guiding them. Add the hieroglyphs. Traditional translations point clearly toward mythology, a lotus flower, a serpent, a story of creation. But ancient religious language often blended spiritual meaning with real physical description, leaving a small, honest opening for deeper interpretation, one modern translators may not have fully explored yet. Add the mystery of the ceilings. Elsewhere in Egypt, painted rooms sit deep underground, with almost no soot, despite requiring flame for light. This puzzle exists completely separate from Dendera, yet it proves something important. Ancient Egyptians solved technical problems in clever ways that modern researchers still cannot fully explain. Finally, add the Baghdad battery. A simple clay jar, built centuries ago, somehow produces a real electrical current when copied exactly today. This does not prove ancient light bulbs existed. It proves that electricity, in some small, simple form, may not have been a completely foreign idea to the ancient world. None of these pieces, standing alone, proves anything remarkable. Garn's observation alone is just one engineer's opinion. Grok's analysis alone is just pattern matching. The battery alone is just a curious chemical reaction. The ceilings alone are just an unrelated lighting puzzle. But together, side by side, these pieces form something historians rarely encounter. A genuine, multi-layered pattern spanning engineering, language, chemistry, and unexplained ancient technique, all pointing toward the same dusty corner of ancient history. This pattern does not prove ancient Egypt secretly had electric lighting. It proves something quieter, and arguably more exciting, that the full picture deserves serious investigation from every field at once, rather than dismissal from any single expert working alone. So after gathering every thread, after comparing every shape, every word, and every unexplained detail, one final question remained unanswered. What did Grok, the one mind untouched by mythology or belief, actually conclude after studying everything laid out before it? The mystery that refuses to die. After every scan, every comparison, and every careful test, Grok delivered its final judgment on the Dendera Light. It was not a bold declaration, and it was not a dramatic headline either. It was something far more careful, far more scientific than that. Grok never claimed the carving was proof of ancient electric lighting. It never said Walter Garn was correct, and it never said the traditional mythological reading was wrong. Instead, it offered something in between, something honest. The carvings, Grok concluded, display engineering-like characteristics significant enough to justify further scientific study. In simple words, the shapes behave too consistently, too precisely, to be dismissed without a closer, more serious look from multiple fields of science. This is not the ending most people expect from a mystery like this. There is no confirmed ancient light bulb sitting in a museum case. There is no secret manual describing how Egyptian priests once wired their temples with hidden power. The truth, at least for now, refuses to arrive in such a simple, satisfying form. Instead, the mystery remains exactly where it has always been, carved quietly into stone, sealed away in a chamber built for only a few trusted eyes, untouched for more than 2,000 years. Think about that for a moment. While entire empires rose and fell, while languages changed completely, while new religions spread across the world, this single carving stayed exactly where it was. Silent, patient, waiting underground in the dark. Every generation that walked past it brought its own beliefs and its own explanations. Ancient priests saw sacred mythology. 19th century explorers saw strange, forgotten symbolism. Walter Garn saw a possible machine. Modern historians see careful religious storytelling. Now, an artificial mind has looked at it too, offering not a final answer, but a renewed, careful question. Perhaps the carving truly is mythology, a beautiful story of creation carved in sacred stone, exactly as most experts believe. Perhaps it captures a forgotten technical idea, something ancient engineers understood briefly before it was lost to time, war, or simple human forgetting. Perhaps it is something else entirely, a form of storytelling humanity has not yet learned how to fully read. What matters most is not choosing one answer today. What matters is refusing to look away simply because an answer feels uncomfortable, or unfamiliar, or difficult to fully prove using current methods. Ancient Egypt has surprised researchers before. It surprised them with the Baghdad Battery. It surprised them with clean, soot-free ceilings hidden far underground. It may be surprising them again, quietly, patiently, through this single carving in Dendera. So the next time someone tells you every ancient mystery has already been solved, remember this hidden crypt, and remember the strange shapes carved into its walls. Because somewhere beneath the sand and stone of Egypt, other carvings may still be waiting, unnoticed, unexplained, holding secrets that history has not yet found the right eyes or the right mind to finally uncover. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.